What's a sign that someone is failing as a parent? Story 1. As someone who works in education, when I tell you your kid did something at school and you won't stop yelling at me and telling me there's no way I'm making a mistake, etc., I consider you not a good parent. Your kid can sometimes have a bad day and it's okay. Just talk with your child about it. Discipline is necessary too. It's not because you discipline your kid that they won't love you anymore. It is key in their education/development. Story 2. When the kids have to be the parent. Mom, did you pay this month's rent? Or, Mom, you have to get up. It's 6:30. You have to go to work. That's too much for a child to handle. They skip the fun years because the parent simply isn't equipped to deal with responsibility. Story 3. When parents are always telling their kids they aren't at fault/someone else is at fault. As an educator, I've seen few kids truly fail at life. Those that do more often than not had parents who always told them that someone else is at fault. Beat up another kid? They provoked my precious angel. What was he supposed to do? Bad grades? The teacher didn't do a good enough job teaching him, etc. Story 4. Not acknowledging their child's emotions. Dismissing anybody with "you're overreacting" or "no you're not" is shitty behavior in general. It starts to get damaging if it's coming from a parent to their child. Story 5. That they aren't looking for ways to improve and learn and get better as their own people or as parents. They stagnate, do whatever is easiest no matter how bad it is for themselves or their family unit, and completely disengage from responsibility. And please note, that's just a sign that they're currently failing as a parent, not that they're bad or failing as people. Story 6. When the kids are consistently filthy and smell bad. 4/5-year-olds still wearing diapers. Had a parent complain that their kid had to take breathing treatments at home, but they smoked inside, had dog and cat pee and feces everywhere, and trash overfilling the can. You set your kids up for a rough time in school when you can smell the family from a mile away. There's a difference in a messy home versus a dirty home. Story 7. When kids run wild. In my job, I see everything from polite kids to the awful, thieving, abusive, antisocial little chavs. If your kid is stealing from stores, abusing workers, smashing things up, vaping, smoking, and underage drinking, throwing things around in the street and leaving trash in the street, you've absolutely failed as a parent and are like also a shitty human being. The parents are cunts and so are the kids. Story 8. When they start checking out. Sometimes this happens to even good parents. There can be a lot of fatigue when giving your whole self to another human being a lot of times. That's why two-parent households seem to have a better success rate. Sometimes, you absolutely have to hand over duties for a sanity check. Story 9. I just came from a thread where parents are defending only letting their teenagers bathe once a week because they have to pick their battles. Their children are going to grow up to be incapable of living independently or holding down a job because parents are unwilling to set even the most basic boundaries out of fear that their child won't like them. Story 10. The parent sees their primary job as making their kid happy. If you are properly parenting, sometimes they will be disappointed or upset. You say no to something. They don't get the latest toy. You don't do things for them that they can do themselves. They don't get everything they want the moment they want it. To parent well means you're a leader. You guide and teach values, and you try to help them become successful and independent. In the process of getting to those goals, there will be plenty of opportunities for happiness along the way. Story 11. Letting their kid make all decisions and never telling their kid no, having zero boundaries. I am a teacher who has students like this, and we also have friends like this. I can talk ad nauseum about how there is really never a reason to do this. What really makes me mad is the parents who do this and use a kid's disability as the excuse. Like, oh sorry my kid hit your kid, she's autistic so she does that a lot. And all kids need consequences and rules. Story 12. Working in education, the sheer amount of parents who are emotionally dependent on their kids. They place all the responsibility of stability and social interactions for themselves on their children, no matter what that child is doing. Plenty of times I'll tell a kid they need to put their phones away because we are supposed to be doing classwork, and they'll mention it's their parent. Not like, hey, I'm stuck at work, make sure you take the bus today kind of messages. To some degree, I can let that go. I'm talking full-on FaceTime calls. Hey girl, what are you up to? During class, your kid is in school, that's what they're up to. And the kids are straight up terrified to not answer these calls/messages because they know their parent will be legitimately angry with them or reject them and guilt punish them when they don't keep them entertained. Your 13-year-old should not be responsible for your lack of friends, job, or mental state. Story 13. When they just do nothing when their child is upset and crying. No, fuck off with all of that. Just let them cry it out, nonsense. Even if you think the reason your child is upset is stupid, you need to be proactive as a parent in either comforting them or giving them a safe space to calm down on their own. You never just let them throw a tantrum and ignore them until they stop, because this just teaches the children that their emotions are something to be ashamed and embarrassed of and to lock them inside. This type of behavior can very quickly lead your child into an anxiety disorder because it basically from a young age sets this early idea that they should hide their emotions because nobody's going to help them when they are upset or frustrated and is going to build a natural divide between you and your child. A child, especially at a young age, crying is because they need their father's help, and they don't really understand any better way to articulate that. By ignoring that as the father, you are building a distrust in your child. They are going to naturally think, well, I always used to fuss and cry for mama and mama never answered me, so I guess mama hates me or something. I'm so tired of the just let them cry it out mantra. You have to understand that what children it may seem like, they are crying over something stupid or petty, but in that child's eyes, this is truly the most frustrating, upsetting, terrifying thing they have ever experienced. And all they want is their mom, dad to help them. Go help them out. Even if they're throwing a tantrum because you wouldn't buy them of candy or something like that, you can still comfort them without giving in to their demands. You can still show them love and support, but still explain to them the fact that you are firm on your decision that they are not getting a treat. Story 14. As someone with a high ACE, adverse childhood experience score, when children are blamed for the feelings and mistakes of their parents. Neither of their parent ever says, I'm sorry, and/or takes accountability when they do something wrong. I was taught that love is conditional and based on performing, achieving, and always being perfect. When children are so afraid to make any mistakes for fear of getting spanked by their father, me and my sister, they don't do anything and have trouble making decisions due to the fear of being punished and berated for making the wrong decision. When they are not taught life skills, assertiveness, taught how to drive, social skills, and shouted at when they don't get all A's. These are red flags something is off at home, and I honestly wish a teacher or social worker from my school would have stepped in and notified CPS, since it took me until high school to realize my parents weren't normal at all. When their mother is enabling an emotionally, verbally, and physically abusive father with narcissistic personality disorder and other undiagnosed mental illnesses. Also, their mother makes fun of their friends and says they're weird when they're in 6th grade. I had a bit of childhood trauma that I'm working on to end the cycle of abuse in my family. Story 15. Hey, that's a tough question, and definitely not black and white. Parenting is super complex and everyone's situation is different. But one big red flag might be when a parent consistently ignores their kid's emotional needs. Like if the kid is obviously upset or struggling, and the parent just brushes it off or doesn't take time to understand what's going on, that's a sign something's off. Kids need to feel heard and supported. Another sign could be if the parent is overly controlling and doesn't let their kid have any independence. Kids need to learn how to make decisions, and sometimes fail on their own, so they can grow and figure stuff out. If a parent is always micromanaging everything, it can really stunt a kid's development. It's also important to look at whether the parent is setting a good example. Kids pick up a lot from just watching their parents. So if a parent is behaving badly, like being disrespectful to others, not taking care of themselves, or breaking promises, then the kid might start thinking that's okay too. Everybody makes mistakes, though, and no one's perfect. But if these things are happening a lot and aren't being addressed, it could be a sign that the parent needs to step back and reevaluate their approach. Story 16. To my neighbors who homeschool their children, it's too late. The window has already closed on them ever being able to read at an adult level. The kids are 11 and 9, and they cannot read. I don't mean they can't read Faulkner. I mean they can't read a menu. Even with no learning or developmental disabilities, they are permanently disabled by your incompetence and by your feel-good ideological attachment to depriving your children of schools. I hate to say it, but if you are homeschooling your children and you don't have specialized training in the education of children, you are probably failing them. Any gaps in your knowledge will become gaps in their knowledge, plus any gaps from the non-perfect fidelity of generational transmission of knowledge. Story 17. I know it's a tiny thing on the outside, But when parents sign their kids up for lessons and then never practice and miss half the classes, there's a surefire way to frustrate a child, and that's to tell them they're a violinist/pianist/dancer, then turn around and never support their progression in that skill. I know it's a panic move for a lot of folks. You want to give your child the best, so you sign them up for instrument lessons. Then expect a 6-year-old to practice of their own volition. The time and money would be better spent just hanging out together, rather than putting everyone in a bad spot where parents are stressed about wasting money and their kid not making progress, while not having the emotional capacity to step back and see that they created this problem. Story 18. Yesterday, I attended a kids' beach soccer tournament. It's just for fun. Rules are different, no scouts are watching, no effect on their teams standing in a league or anything like that. A teen on the opposing team ended up with a red card because he wouldn't stop arguing with the ref, even after a warning, a yellow card, and his coach and teammates yelling at him to stop. Got himself kicked out for the next day, too. And what was Mama doing the whole time? Yelling at both her kid and the ref, obscenities included. Didn't need to be a psychologist to see where he learned it. That kid is doomed to be an unhappy, entitled asshole, all because his mommy thinks he's special. Story 19. When they can't apologize to their children. No one is perfect, even parents. I remember the first time my mom sat me down and apologized for raising her voice over a misunderstanding we had. I was dumbfounded, but also developed a newfound respect for her. It helped me realize that it's okay to make mistakes as long as we take responsibility for them and strive to make things right wherever we can. On the contrary, this is something my dad has never done, and most likely will never do. It's also one of the reasons we're not as close as years have gone by. I've never felt comfortable going to him about anything. Story 20. Mean kids. There's a period of time where toddlers turn into little jerks, and that's part of figuring out what it means to be a little human. If I meet a 9-plus-year-old and they're an asshole for no reason, or angry and violent, or lack empathy toward their peers and other people, their parents are failing them. Kids are going to kid, sure, but they are also going to grow up with lessons that were never taught and points that were never made. My nephew is just getting into a little asshole stage, but we are all involved in helping him understand what it means to exist in a society with other people. Editing to also mention that I come from a family with several neurodiverse people, and I'm fully aware that mental illness untreated can also lead to being a little asshole, but a child isn't going to diagnose or treat themselves. Story 21. When I messaged my father, who has an alcohol addiction and has always been very destructive, whom I haven't spoken to in 4 years, I told him that my girlfriend and I are expecting our first child. All he sent back was, "Congratulations, buddy, to you and the wrong name of my girlfriend. Don't worry, I won't stand in your way. I consider this a failure." Story 22. Their child is under 10 and overweight. Getting downvoted, but I stand by what I said. If your child is fat, you've failed as a parent. You've allowed your child to do and learn toxic traits such as no self-control. You've allowed them to drift toward an unhealthy lifestyle that will impact their well-being from a physical standpoint as they age and a mental standpoint as they age. It's a parent's job to teach healthy behaviors. If your child is fat, you've failed in that aspect. Story 23. Their kids don't know how to do things. If you have an 18-year-old who is ready to love out and they don't know how to cook, do laundry, budget, or get up and go to a job on time, then you fucked up. So many parents who have all the resources and best intentions do everything for their child. They make sure that they pass every subject by talking to the teacher and allowing a rewrite. They don't give them the freedom to make mistakes in a safe, nurturing environment where the long-term repercussions of that mistake are zero. Then they wonder why they are still at home at 25. Story 24. Their kids don't know how to do things. If you have an 18-year-old who is ready to love out and they don't know how to cook, do laundry, budget, or get up and go to a job on time, then you fucked up. So many parents who have all the resources and best intentions do everything for their child. They make sure that they pass every subject by talking to the teacher and allowing a rewrite. They don't give them the freedom to make mistakes in a safe, nurturing environment where the long-term repercussions of that mistake are zero. Then they wonder why they are still at home at 25. Story 25. I have been a single mother for most of my daughter's life. Thankfully, I've had my family and they were willing to help me along the way. Though sometimes it felt like depending on them made me a bad parent, there is no instruction manual to parenting. All you can do is what you think is best for your child and try not to be more of a friend than a parent, because after all, You are raising the future when you think about it. I was 20 when I had my daughter and still a kid myself, really. So that was one thing I figured out along the way anyways. My daughter is 13 now, and a lot like me when I was 13, even though she hates to hear that. I don't say this to her, my family does. We're both pretty hard-headed and spout off before thinking sometimes. I love her more than the universe is vast, and I know she doesn't always understand why I say no or why I set boundaries, and it upsets her and I'm ruining her life, but I hope she can understand someday that I'm just trying to prepare her for the real world. I remember feeling the same way at her age, but now I understand why my parents had these things set in place. I still question myself as a parent, and hope I'm raising a respectable young lady that will be strong and independent when she enters the world as an adult. All I want is for her to succeed in life, but life is full of curveballs, so I hope that I'm doing right by her. I remember family saying you'll understand when you have children of your own someday. I hated hearing it, but son of a bitch were they right. LOL. I think most parents question themselves as parents or how they are doing as parents, but all we can do is our best and what is best for our babies. Story 26. Just had this conversation sort of with my mum. If you have to smack, more than a slap on the wrist, your kid more than once. If it gets to the point of needing physical violence, then every step and lesson beforehand has failed. I still remember smacking my daughter because she made me really mad and I left a handprint, not bruise, on her leg. I hit her for me. I was angry and needed to vent. Did her no good, although I don't think she remembers it. I never hit her or her younger brother again. Once and once was enough. That was my failure, not hers. I lost it with a child. 30 years later, and two very decent adults, it still haunts me.